I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, a crown for every achievement. Today, we're going to be talking about Tick Tock A Tale for Two, which was developed by Other Tales Interactive and was released in 2019. We played the game on the Switch. It also has an Android port, as well as like on Windows and Mac. And what's cool about that, to me anyway, is the fact that this game is the most cross-platform compatible game ever because it in no way requires you to be connected to the person you're playing with.
Right. When you start the game up, it's like you have to play this with another person. It won't work otherwise. So like we have a Discord server for you to join if you don't have anyone to play with, which is cool that we live in a time where you can just do that.
Yeah.
Be like, this is a co-op game, and if you don't have anyone to play it with, you can just easily find them online via this platform.
With like voice chat and everything set up
Yeah.
already. And the reason that you're going to need a second person for this game is because this is a co-op adventure puzzle game. I would say mostly a puzzle game, more so than an adventure. There's not a whole lot of like inventory management and stuff like that.
Yeah, the description, I think it was pulled from like the eShop, the Nintendo eShop. It described it as a puzzle, or Jesus. It did describe it as a puzzle game, but I meant to say an escape room style or inspired game, which we've talked about a few games that have claimed to be that. And I guess this fits into that, under that umbrella.
Yeah, this is pretty close to that type of escape room design. I felt like, because 999 from the Nonary game series also claims to be an escape the room game, but there's literally a room that you have to get out of in that one.
Yeah, it's literally an escape room game.
Right. Whereas this is more, I want to say it's narrative focused, but it kind of isn't. The narrative is opaque. It's a little bit difficult to like pick up on.
Yeah, if you've listened to our other episodes, I'd most closely compare this to Year Walk, where I think it's more focused on like creating an atmosphere for you to set its puzzles in, more so than it's focused on like the story itself.
Yeah. You end up using like little tidbits that you pick up for puzzle solutions, but for the most part, you could pretty safely ignore the story and still end up with like the gameplay experience pretty much unchanged. Which I don't know how I feel, but probably the most negative thing that I have to say about this, because really there's so little to it in terms of like amount of content that is there. It does a pretty good job with most of everything else that it does, but it does set up like this not time traveling, but like this expansive narrative that takes place over like a decade, and you really see very little of it actually played out, and then there's just kind of an implication for an ending.
Yeah. This game does have a narrative that seems interesting as you're describing, but it doesn't really let you participate in it at all, nor does it really like carry, I think, the amount of weight, at least that I would want it to, in a game that's like on the shorter side, you know?
Yeah. The way that it stands, like the narrative is kind of the only thing that would make you want to come back to play the game again, and I don't necessarily know that you would really get all that much more out of it, like with the additional context of everything. So where do you want to start diving into this?
I think just the basic concept of it, I mean, which we've described, but I'm surprised I haven't seen another game like this before, like just a co-op puzzle game where you need each person playing the game on a separate screen to be able to share information between the two of you. Like, it's such a cool idea, and it works really well, and it just seems like the kind of thing that I don't know. I don't know if any other games have tried something like this before. I was just surprised. I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, I was actually pretty amused at the thought, but the closest comparison that I draw to this is something like Space Team,
Mm.
where the idea is that you have information that everyone else does not have, and you have to share that in some way. And this game encourages you to try and like talk through things as opposed to just like physically showing the other person your screen,
Mm-hmm.
which I think does enhance it. There are a few, which I'm sure we'll get into, puzzles where it seems like it would be nearly impossible to accurately describe what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that about it. I wish that this was. I mean, I don't necessarily know that this isn't a focus, like this co-op focus, but I like the way that this implements it, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It just I feel like something like Space Team is more of like a party type game, and this, like, having you go through the game with another person I don't know, it strikes me as unique, and I'm finding it hard to describe it or compare it to stuff, but I really like the concept a lot.
You can imagine that if my first instinct was to make a comparison to Space Team, that I
Right.
also had a pretty difficult time comparing it to other things.
Yeah, it just co-ops existed for so long, and this just
Mhm.
seems like a genuinely unique form of it.
We could take the highly cynical route and be like, this is just to make you buy 2 copies of the game.
It doesn't feel like it's trying to get its fingers in your wallet.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's no in-app purchases.
No.
I will say, I find it. This feels progressive in the co-op space in a way that is unique, is new, because it's, while you do each have to own a copy of the game, and I genuinely don't think that's a big deal, considering what this was like a $5 purchase or
It was
something.
cheap. I don't remember exactly how much it was. But
Yeah. The reason that like online multiplayer has become so popular lately is that because people have a tendency to play games at home. Like they don't invite people over to play games anymore because there are so many options to play a game over the internet that the like cost to value, like if you're not already hanging out with someone and you just want to play a game, it's easy to just get on Overwatch and like join a server as opposed to driving somewhere to play Castle Crashers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that this is sort of like a melding of the two. It's a couch co-op game, but you can be on separate couches and still have the same experience.
That's a good way to put it. It really does feel like that kind of experience, like sitting next to somebody and playing and like commenting on the game together, more so than other online games. And it gives you that like experience that we like a lot of, like having to take notes and like compare information, and it really gives you that feeling of like working through problems.
Mm-hmm. It also in that same vein, that experience of playing an adventure game with another person that we've sort of like talked about enjoying on this podcast a couple of times before, it's that like the collaborative puzzle solving effort, which is I guess sort of where the escape room part of this comes in. This game does, and it necessitates it, so you end up being able to talk through things a lot more than if somebody was playing Grim Fandango or whatever, where you're just like kind of sitting there, you're like, oh wait, what if you do this thing? And it's like, okay. In this one, you're setting up, you do the whole setup verbally, so the conversation has already started.
Mm-hmm.
And you use all of that to solve the puzzles in this game, which I feel like is the meat of this, right?
Yeah.
Were there, I'm trying to think, like there were a couple of puzzles that we thought were difficult, and there were a couple of puzzles that I thought were stupid. But I think the majority was overall pretty good.
Yeah, I really liked the puzzle design. I think there was one instance, like maybe one I can think of I disliked, but I thought it was pretty good overall and struck like I think a good difficulty level for the kind of game this is. Like you don't want to be playing a co-op game with someone else and like hit a wall where you both get frustrated. Like that's awkward with another person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought this skirt like rode that line pretty well. Like it was challenging in spots, but we were able to get through it without looking anything up. Um,
I think I looked up a Morse code like dictionary
oh
to try and figure that out, but it turned out to not be necessary at all. I just did it because I was like, there ain't no way this game expects me to just know Morse code, right? Like,
yeah, I guess there are some hiccups there.
I mean, that was me being like very brash about
Yeah,
how I just expected, I don't know, something about games has made me inherently distrustful.
I mean, we were pretty confused at that point. So
That's true. Yeah, there were 2 or 3 places that I remember us being stuck. One of them was that Morse code because we were given multiple. And I'm going to frame this as a negative, but in reality, I think this is a strength of the design because we were given a lot of things that we felt went together, and we had to decipher like where to apply each thing. Like you had the Morse code tamper, and after you send a message, it responds with one, and we didn't know where to use that because there were a couple of different places where it seemed reasonable that we could have applied that to. And in the end, all of them were related because they were to the larger light bulb puzzle.
right.
And I think that is great because we spent a lot of time sort of like exploring it as much as this game allows you to. We didn't actually mention that, but there's no like locomotion in this game necessarily. It's more just like screen to screen stuff, which for something that's released on a phone makes sense. And another way that it's kind of like your walk. But the fact that everything was there in a way that after we had each looked at all of our different locations multiple times, it coalesced and everything did fit together. And like they weren't disparate pieces to different puzzles. They were all part of the same thing, and we just had to realize that. I thought that was a great moment of enlightened design.
Yeah, the pieces fall into place like organically. Yeah, I think any snags that we hit were kind of similar for when we played Harvester, where you go around that town and you find all these pieces, and we would try for probably way too long to try to get the pieces to fit somewhere in that immediate environment. And in reality, you kind of just need to like pick things up as you go, and then once you find the place for it to go, it'll stand out. So yeah, I feel like there were a couple of instances where we kind of tried to brute force things before they were ready, like before we were at the right spot.
Yeah, I want to know if this is the puzzle that you wrote down as not being a huge fan of, which was when you were presented with like 16 squares that just had like some like clock hands on them and buttons underneath.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Because that would be the one that I would say did not feel like it really it did not sing when we found the other piece to it. Like we were sitting there looking at it going like, does this make sense? Can you put these numbers to this number? I felt like it presented you with too much information on too complex screen.
Yeah, and the fact that each one of them you could move the hands, because like it's not. You described it as a clock, which is a decent way to describe it, but it's like a circle with 4 hands pointing, up, down, left, and right.
I forgot there were 4. Yeah,
there were and you can move all of them on each and every single one. So you're like, your mind's racing with like, what kind of bullshit am I gonna have to do with this? Like, so it kind of overwhelms you with moving parts, I think.
Yeah,
and then all the buttons underneath.
It's a daunting task too, because like when you see that, your assumption is that because the solution overall, spoilers if you're listening to this without playing the game, puzzle spoilers are the hardest ones to like give a fair warning to, but the solution is that there's one of them that has a combination that is like in the cardinal directions. And so you punch that in and then hit the button and one opens. But when you look at that for the first time, it's like the fucking telescope in Eternal Darkness, where you're like, or any puzzle in Myst, where you look at it and you're like, do I need 16 different combinations? Because that's a lot to put in. Like, you dread it. You're like, I don't want to do that. That's going to take forever. I'm going to fuck something up and not know where the like mistake was made.
Yep. I feel like for whatever reason your mind immediately goes to the worst possible outcome, and then you can't shake that feeling of like, oh god, it's coming, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a weird puzzle phenomenon there. But yeah, I think they probably could have cut the number of lockers there like in half.
Yeah. Yeah, if there were
post boxes, I think is what they were.
If there were any improvements to the like main, like the core loop of this game that I would make, is one that make some of the puzzles have too many moving parts that are like unnecessary. So like maybe trim down on those. And two, take a page out of the book of Freddy Fish or Pajama Sam and make the other interactable objects in the environment just do more things when you interact with them. Because there are tons of things that you can click on that make a sound or something, and it is frustrating because you feel like they should be doing something. There are things that you can move around, and there are things that at one point you tap on a barrel enough times and it just breaks and you can get at what's inside of it. And I feel like those would be less of a distraction if there was like a clear thing that happened, like in a shooting gallery, like whenever you click on it, like you tap the map and it goes like blah, like have a text blurb come up, be like map of town. That's all I want. Just anything to make me not be like tapping on every object on the screen.
Yeah, the thing that I think the game sets up expectations for that, and it's the puzzle where you have to go down into the basement, I think, of the house is where it is, and there's like all kinds of jars and stuff on the shelves, and like everything you can click on it and move it, and you're like, you feel like there's twice as much stuff in there at like minimum than what there really is, and you can like tap on the pipes and you kind of feel like it makes different pitches depending on where you tap on it, you know, like, which is a nice touch of realism, but I think it's a few too many steps, or a few steps too far. There we go, I got it. Because then you get your tinfoil hat on and you're like, you know, trying to tap the thing. It's like, does this do anything?
Yeah, because in the same like area, when you tap on those pipes, you hear the different tones. There's also a puzzle that involves you hitting bells to make a song, and it's like the two things just will connect in your mind. Like you want to find that pattern, and you're like, okay, can I play the bell song on the pipe now? I don't know. But yeah, so that's that. And what's weird is that in a lot of games, this kind of thing would be a positive. Like the fact that they did put enough detail in that, like, tapping on different objects makes different sounds, and some of them are interactable in like a minor way. Being able to slide the jars and shit on the shelves, I think is cool. But it would be more cool if I didn't think that there was somehow a puzzle related to it.
There's too many red herrings.
Yeah.
That's what it ends up being. One thing I wasn't a big fan of was the clock in the little square, and it had to be at a certain time for you to access the clock shop. That wasn't very clear, like, if it like what advanced the time, because it seemed to be different for the two of us at a number of points, and it just wasn't clear if it was moving around like Pokemon rules, like taking steps and moving around advances time, or if there's certain triggers that make it advance. But like that was really like the messaging wasn't very clear. Like I think it's okay to have that variable of like you can only access this stuff at blank time.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. It just wasn't very clear how it worked.
Yeah. I think my guess would be that it was a trigger-based thing. It was if you had done something. I think this is a design issue with the game. Like, this might be an unsolvable problem for them. Because if you're gonna... This is a thing that happens. Like, there are just triggers in games that, like, unlock things. And they've contextualized it as time, as a clock. That maybe could be the flaw, because then you feel like time in its inevitability passes, and so you think, do I have to wait, because you can't think of anything else that you do. But the problem is the two games aren't connected in any way, so even if you've solved all of your puzzles, the other person has to be finished as well before the thing ticks over. So I think it's like a certain number of, you have to have seen or done everything before it unlocks, is like the way that they staged it. But it would be difficult without explicitly telling the player like how to do that. But I agree, I think it is unclear.
I know there was a time, at least once, maybe twice, where you were like, oh, I'm in the clock shop now, and like it was just closed for me. Like I think it opened at like 3. And it was still like 1 for me, and you're like, I'm in here.
Yeah, this cool shit.
Yeah, look at me having fun playing the game. So yeah, I thought that was a bit clunky, but yeah, I don't know how you would fix it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about visuals in this game?
Why, yes, I do, Chad.
I don't want to steal your thunder on this one because you're the one who pointed it out initially. But the visual style of this game does remind me, and you first, of Year Walk, which I think is what sort of was the basis for any comparison that we made. Like that, and the fact that it's like a puzzle game, and that it was a mobile game that is also on the Switch and PC. Kind of a lot of similarities, I guess. And I do agree. I think that there's something about Year Walk that to me is more charming than the visuals in this game.
I think it's just Year Walk as a game is just a bit more fleshed out. There's more parts, there's more characters, there's more just art assets overall in Year Walk as in comparison to this. And I think that makes a big difference. This is smaller scale, and it's got, I don't know, Year Walk has more polish to it, I guess. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, thinking maybe I'll hit on a new thread, but I don't think I got one.
I mean, that's fair. I did like it for what it's worth. The game is constantly dark. Like the whole the game overall it's set at night, and most of the rooms that you're in are like pretty dimly lit, and it is set in the past, and they didn't have like fancy LED light bulbs and shit way back then, so some of that makes some sense, but I think that contributes to the atmosphere. It does make some of the like locations feel like there should be more to them at times.
Yeah, there isn't a ton of contrast. Like the color palette's pretty consistent among all things. Is I think another thing that makes it feel a little bit one note, maybe.
This is one thing that we didn't touch on. Somehow, until now. But like, this is a game that has fantastical elements to it. Like, in the game, one of the characters makes like mechanized animals.
Automatons.
Yeah, there's like a bird and little bugs, and there's another character who can like turn time back and they capture time in a way that is like sort of explained as being like a living on borrowed time, kind of like Deracine almost, like they suck the time out of something else and put it into someone else. And despite all that, like, even the really fantastic stuff it seems like it blends into the environment more than it should. Like, when you go up to the roof, and by roof I mean second floor of a building, it's explicitly not a roof.
Yes, it's like an attic.
Yeah, and that's the word.
Yeah. The fusion between second floor and roof.
The attic. It's like the second floor's roof.
You know what I'm saying. Yeah.
But in there's this bird, like a weird steampunk bird, and it just looks like it belongs there. And it's so, because it should stand out more than it does. But all of that to say, I really don't like. Like, I went on for a bit there, mostly because I forgot what the word attic meant. But realistically, like, despite all of that, I think that visually the game works. I think it works pretty well. The puzzle elements stand out enough from the background that they feel like natural, and everything is well done. Like, it looks consistent. Everything is decipherable. And so, comparisons to Year Walk aside, I do think that, like, I think the visuals are part of what made us want to play this game in the first place. It's like, because we literally just stumbled on it. And I don't know, it's a good time. I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, like the combination between the premise and the visuals was a hard sell for us.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the end of this game? Or do you have another note that should go before that?
I feel like I have some stuff. Yeah, the only other thing I think that would be interesting to ask is, do you think, like, how possible do you think it would be to actually, like, play this with a stranger on Discord?
I mean, never say never, right? I feel like it would be a weird experience because you basically would have to play it for your first time with a stranger. And I don't know. I would feel, this is a personal thing, I would feel very self-conscious while doing this because, like, I do this when I'm doing escape rooms as well. I feel like I have to be, like, pulling my weight in some way. And if there's, like, something I'm not able to do, this game might actually alleviate part of that because it necessitates the two players to work together.
Yeah, the other person can't do it your part for you. Right.
So you do have to, like, share your information. But then it is just, like, luck of the draw. Like, who knows if the person that you're playing with is going to be... I mean, this doesn't seem like the kind of game that would be played by someone who is like some kind of like FPS loudmouth type character.
Yeah. If you pick this up and have bothered to get on Discord, it's probably like your kind of game.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe there's a reason those people don't have friends and need to use the Discord.
Burn. Yeah, I feel like it would be really uncomfortable, like, at least to start out.
Yeah. If you do happen to pick this game up based on this podcast and play it on Discord, well, first of all, use our Discord link on the website. But if you do use their Discord, I would love to hear that experience because that does sound like something that would be kind of wild. Okay, I want to end by talking about the ending of this game, and I'm talking about the narrative ending, not like the act of playing, nor are we going into final thoughts just yet. But the conclusion of this game is basically you discover that one of the characters who has like perfected this science fiction-y kind of technique to use a stopwatch or just a regular watch to like take time from other people in order to preserve either her own or her sister's life. I think the person who made the watch is dying, and the other person is using her invention to prolong her life.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And everything is represented by these like little fireflies in jars that you like see, and they have like numbers attached to them. And then in the end, it's like, oh, it was you. This game is that. It is the thing that you've spent your time with, and the time that you've spent on this game is now going to prolong the life of this other person. And I find that strange, I guess, as a concept, but also I kind of liked just having a weird sci-fi implication at the end of this. Like, I think it kind of tied it up better than I expected it to.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I think it's a really, as you said, a really good sci-fi concept, like a cool twist, and it takes advantage of video games as a medium as well at the same time by like saying like, oh yeah, you the player have spent the time, we know this, to get here, and then so we just like the idea that they've like taken that time you've spent in the game and used it to extend this character's life is cool.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you also liked that.
Yeah.
I thought there was a potential for one of us, and I think honestly it would be more likely to be me, to find this stupid, because it does seem kind of like put in at the end. But I think it works. I think they do enough to set it up that I actually like where it is, even if I don't fully get like the full scope of the narrative.
Yeah.
It makes the ending still impactful even if you don't have that. So it's a little bit of good writing.
Yeah, I think it's the strongest thing in the game, personally.
Like, at all?
Like, I mean, narratively.
Oh, okay. It's like, that seems odd, but okay.
Doors popped open. It was a little bit spooky.
Oh, that's the wind?
Yeah, the pressure differential or whatever.
That's what I was going to say, even though I don't fully understand that concept.
Me neither, but I know that that's what it is. It's a very windy day, dear reader.
Dear listeners.
Yeah.
I mean...
You're not reading the transcription of the podcast?
Do we have... There's got to be a clock thing, right?
You would think so. A time-related thing.
All right. Do we have out-of-time thoughts?
Tick thoughts.
God damn it, that's better. Anyway, do we have tick thoughts?
Yeah, I enjoyed this game. Like, it's always fun to just be browsing the eShop or Steam or whatever, and then just find a game that looks interesting and just get it and play it right away and have a good time. That can be a surprisingly rare experience, I think.
That is true.
You just kind of roll the dice on a thing. And that's what this was for us. And I think it mostly delivered on all the things I thought it would. The premise was cool. It was fun working through the puzzles together, taking notes on a notepad, as we like to do. Putting together that letter was a highlight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Cannot believe we didn't, play and find out for yourself what the fuck we're talking about.
Yep. And, but I do think it felt like it fell a little short, though. Like, it was short lengthwise, and it didn't quite feel like it was as fleshed out as I might have liked. The similarities to Your Walk probably negatively impacted my opinion of this a little bit, because we liked that so much. But now overall, I think on its own merit, I like this quite a bit. It just left me wanting more.
Yeah. Um. So I don't know if ever we've had a game where the final thoughts were so like your description just now so closely mirrors what I was going to say that I'm going to go in a slightly different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I basically agree with all of that. The one thing that I do want to point out is like this game. I feel like if this game is like on Metacritic or whatever, which I'm sure it is, it probably has like a yellow square, a like mid 60s 70s type review score, because I feel like people and even us, like when we're talking about a game and we're trying to like come up with a our supreme judgment on it as the greatest video game critics of all time.
Uh-huh.
uh you have a tendency, you want to compare this game sort of like globally to other games and just be like, yeah, this game was good, but it was real short and it was like blah 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 all these other things. So I enjoyed it, but it's not like a 10 out of 10. Like I wouldn't rate this game at like this is as good as Shadow of the Colossus, but in a way it is at what it does, because the scope of this game is so small and like the goals that it has are so like minimal. Like it's only really trying to do one thing in a unique way. I think the game pulls it off pretty spectacularly. And yeah, like it isn't for everyone because one, it's a weird, slow puzzle game, and not everybody is into those.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's got this like co-op thing to it, which isn't gonna be up everyone's alley. And sure, those are definitely like marks against it universally, but I honestly think that this game does a really good job at being what it is. So there it is. I give this is a perfect 10 on the NOCLIP rating score that we've never given a game before. Also, as a side note, we need to come up with a name for this type of game, because I feel like it's something that we run into occasionally and I want to like categorize it. We've basically been calling them like
Escape room games?
no, I mean like what we've been referring to as Chad and Andy late night fun time games. Just like a game that you can go all the way through in like less than 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like a popcorn game, like a snack game.
I don't like either of those.
No, I don't either. That's why we need to come up with a
Okay.
name. So stay tuned for that. And I would love to cover more of these type of things on Pocket, because it's like I feel like that's like the epitome of what this sub show is about.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to NoClip Pocket.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're finally gonna be talking about Xenoclash. So Andy, what do you know about Xenoclash?
Almost nothing.
I love it. So the most exciting thing about this whole experience for me is going to be watching Andy discover what the fuck this game is. So I hope you will join us for that. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find all of our old episodes, including games that we mentioned this episode, such as 999 and Harvester.
And Yearwalk.
And Yearwalk. One of those is actually a NoClip Pocket episode. Links to our YouTube channel, our Twitter, our Discord, where you can come play Tick Tock with somebody or just talk about fucking Dark Souls.
Who would have guessed that people would be talking about Dark Souls on our server?
It seems almost unbelievable. Until next time, stay spicy.
If I have some nuanced opinions to give about video games,